So when I said that this has been pulled together basically from a team of people, when I came up with the idea of doing NASA iTech, I sat down with our center chief technologists and said, hey, here's my idea. What do you guys think about it? And they provided feedback. I basically asked them for input or guidance. They helped me to design this. And I think I contribute a lot of the success to this program, those numbers that you saw, really from the contributions that our center chief technologists have been able to give. So I'd like each one of them to just kind of, introduce yourself and then tell me what center you're coming from, and maybe sort of the core competencies from that center, like what that center focuses on.
Are these on?
Yep,
Can you hear me?
they're on.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Ronnie Clayton. I'm from the Johnson Space Center down in Houston. We're the Human Spaceflight Center. So when we talk core competencies, a lot of what we do is involved in flying humans in space. So you're looking at, we have what's called the Health and Human Performance Directorate. That's where the flight docs are at. That's where you do everything from food to biological, human health, countermeasures, radiation, all of those kind of things. There's also a human research program that's funded through the Human Exploration and Operations Directorate. That's also looking at the way HRP works, probably going into more detail than I should to start. HRP looks at all the risks that are involved in flying humans and how do you work off those risks. As you know, though, also at JSC, we have the space station program, we have the commercial crew program that's partnered with KSC, and we have the Orion program. So you have those human exploration programs. We have what Gateway that's being stood up. So you look at the what we call environmental crew and life support system, ECLIS. So everything to do with air, water, food, waste, how you treat those. And then you look at the other, a lot of what JSC does is around systems design, designing missions, and what are the capabilities and what do you need for that. So you get into electrical power. We're not the leaders at the agency on that, but we have to integrate those systems. So I'm probably going on too long. Let me hand it over to John, and we can come back to any questions.
Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm from NASA Marshall Space Flight Center down in Huntsville, Alabama. We're most known, of course, for the work with the Space Launch System, the newest launch vehicle for heavy lift. And we also control the payloads that are flown on the space station. So while down at Johnson, they control and work with the astronauts, of course, we work on the scientific payloads and control those from NASA Marshall. We also develop the new technologies for environmental control and life support for the future, trying to do closed-loop technologies there. Advanced manufacturing is one of the key areas of NASA Marshall as well, trying to reduce cost, whether that's additive manufacturing to produce rocket engines, some of the metals and closeout technologies that we do, as well as the in-space manufacturing where we're developing systems that operate right now on space station to 3D print in situ. And then, of course, we have our science activities where we support astrophysics, heliophysics, and earth science, and most notably, of course, propulsion technologies.
Ramona?
Hi, I'm Ramona Travis from the Stennis Space Center. We're the second largest in geographic size, but the smallest in the number of actual civil servants who work there. Our primary, we're pretty much a single-focused center, focused on rocket engine testing, starting back in the early 60s with the Saturn V engines through the space shuttle and now on to the SLS rockets. We also work with a number of private companies in testing their engines as well, including additive manufactured engines and pieces and of the like. I'll pass it on, and so we'll have more time to discuss other things too.
Hello, I'm Harry Partridge. I'm from NASA Ames. We're in Silicon Valley in California. So Ames describes itself as it says 8 core competencies, and they cover a variety of areas. With the IT center, we have the supercomputers. We have a lot of the software for robotics, machine learning, things like that. We do the entry systems. Most of the materials that NASA is flown for reentry has come from there. We do a lot of work on the response models for the materials coming back into space. Do the air traffic control. A lot of the software written that the FAA uses now for your aircraft management was actually written and prototyped at NASA Ames. We do the life sciences. We don't do much in the human area, but we do a lot of the fundamental life sciences for space. The Astrobiology Institute is there. We do some work, some of the lower TRL work in ECLIS, the environmental controls for space. And I'm sure I've missed a couple of the, but anyway, it's a fairly broad and really interesting center, and we get to leverage some of the work that goes on in the Silicon Valley.
So now I'm going to kind of ask you guys a few questions in terms of, like, you know, your specific role, because you kind of did a broad overview. So as a center chief technologist, what's your primary responsibility? And I know at different centers it's a little bit different, but I'm trying to give the audience sort of a feel for like your background and sort of your engagement with technology from a center perspective. So what, your office, Ronnie.
Right. So I'm the deputy chief technologist at JSC. Chris Colbert is our chief technologist. Chris had a couple of conflicts this week and couldn't make it here.
We're happy to have you, Ronnie.
Well,
You've
I
been
appreciate
very,
that. Thank
Ronnie's
you.
been very involved since the beginning, so.
Thank you, Kara. Chris is actually kind of matrixed at JSC. He supports our center director, Mark Geyer, and then he is matrixed into our Exploration, Integration, and Science division, and that's where I'm located. What we do at JSC is we have different technology funding opportunities. Some of those are funded directly through the center, others are through the Space Technology Mission Directorate and HEO. And so we try to act as an advisor, you know, based on the competencies and the areas that we work at JSC. This is where we ought to be putting our technology funding. We need to go look at what the gaps are, what the needs are, what we're trying to accomplish. And so we help advise where the money should go. We have specific STMD points of contact that also work with STMD. But so we have that advisory role. We also have specific technology funding at JSC for small technology projects that we call IRAD. We help fund those. Within STMD, you'll hear game-changing, TDM, we have SBIR. So, and Harry's very involved, all of the folks up here are very involved in SBIR, if you're not familiar with those. But so we help review, I mean, you work that at multiple ways. You help come up with the topic areas, and then you review the proposals that come back.
So would you say that you're pretty knowledgeable about technologies that are being developed external or more internal?
Me personally, and that's going to vary with the panel up here, I'm probably more internal. But I mean, that's part of why we try to do these events, is to try to make sure we understand what's going on out in that external environment.
Right.
Yolanda Marshall's here from JSC. She helps and looks for partnerships. So the more that we can find external opportunities, leverage those, partner with folks to help offset development costs, you know, that's better. It's a win-win.
Absolutely. Do you want to take that, John?
Sure. I'll try not to. I think we're all going to have somewhat similar answers.
It's a
you
little
know.
bit different, though.
So I also sit on the chair of our TAC, which is our Technology Assessment Committee, which helps guide the investments that we make at the center, whether that's for the Center Innovation Fund, our SIF program, or other IRAD calls. We also have a partnerships office that I work closely with. So if people want to work with us, they would contact them. Of course, if people are just looking for some quick look assessments or some advisory input, they can call me directly, and I'll take those externally as well. When we do things like collaborations like the ACO call, which is out right now, or tipping point activities. Another hat that I have to wear as the chief technologist, of course, is the champion for innovation. So a lot of us we like to say we're oversubscribed, and that we have a lot more to do than we have time to do, and it's really easy to put your head down and focus on your task at hand. But my job is to tell everybody to, hey, remember to look up from time to time and say, hey, do I really want to do this the same way 5 years from now? We need to always be looking for new and innovative ways to do things better so that we can improve our efficiencies and capabilities throughout the years.
So John, if I'm a small startup company and I think that maybe my technology were to align with some of the research and development that you guys are doing at your center, would it be feasible for me as a small startup company to contact you and say, hey, I have a technology, I think it might work, and it might be more advanced? Would that be feasible for me to just reach out to you?
So right now the answer is absolutely. However, I'm learning bandwidth is certainly limited. But in general, yeah, I mean, I've had quite a few, and I'm always open to taking calls, and really, some of them don't take a lot of my time, right? It's just, hey, call me up, and I can give them a quick answer, and then I can also point them in the right direction to where the real subject matter experts are.
Yes.
Because all of us really have reached back throughout the agency for the real subject matter experts in a specific area, and we can forward you onto those and point you in the right direction.
Okay, Ramona?
A lot of what you've already heard from the prior two folks also fall to me as well. I serve as a member of the Center Director's staff and serve as an advisor to the other senior management on issues regarding technology and innovation, just as John was sharing, having to oversee innovation activities, being the principal person for that at the center. I'm probably the primary door for external folks to come in, bringing technology ideas, but we do work in concert with our partnerships office and tech transfer. They do a lot of work of taking NASA technology and spinning it out. And I try to look more towards and working with other partnerships groups at the center, bringing technology in. Oversee a lot of same programs with SBIR. I actually serve as the person who helps coordinate some of the STTR, so that's with the small businesses in concert with research institutions. So we serve as, all of us together, as the board for a lot of the decision making on the STTR. One thing that we also do as a group, we represent our centers back to headquarters and serve on a technology council for the agency. And Harry may want to share a little bit more about that as well, where we provide our insights and represent our centers and our capabilities back to headquarters, bringing issues, concerns, capabilities, reaching back to subject matter experts that we have, that kind of thing, and providing advice on assorted programs that go out. So I'll pass it on to Harry now.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess the primary role is advisor to the center director on technology. We fund our local IRAD and Center Innovation Fund type proposals. What I consider a significant part of it is advising people on where to go for funding to carry on projects after they go through the early stages, and who to brief, how to go about it, comment on what their content of their proposals should be. I am probably more of an early stage person. I'm definitely more of an early stage person than the later TRL, so I get involved in a lot of the early stage programs within NASA, review a fair number of proposals.
How many?
You don't want to know.
No,
I review a lot of proposals.
Give me a number, Harry.
If I tell you what I really read, nobody would believe me, so.
I would believe you.
But it's well over 600 proposals a year I read.
I was off a little bit.
And I mean, some of them are fellowship proposals, so I really enjoy that program. I read all of the Space Technology Research fellowship proposals. I think that's one of my favorite programs at NASA at the moment.
Not NASA iTech?
And iTech is also fun.
Oh, okay.
Actually, the other program that I really like is NIAC, if you've never heard of it. I think
yes,
that's
I
probably
do
the
too.
most for creative, far-out ideas, I really think that program has a lot going for it. So, at any rate, so I I read a lot. My background is actually quantum chemistry, as I was a quantum chemist, and so all my publications are in quantum chemistry. And I do represent NASA on the MGI subcommittee, so the Materials Genome Initiative. NASA's not a strong player in that for a variety of reasons, but I think it's a really nifty area for advancing materials technology.
So what I'd like to do is, I do have mics that are sitting at both sides of the room. I'm not sure if there's anybody that actually would want to ask them any questions specific to technologies or their particular technology, or something in terms of as a chief technologist or center chief technologist perspective from the agency, but I wanted to open it up if there are any questions.
Thanks, Kira. Ed Gallagher, I'm here with the Lazarus team. If you exclude the participants from this particular event, can you each maybe tell us one of your favorite or most impactful relationships that was built between NASA and a former finalist, and what that meant and what kind of impact it had to NASA? Thank you.
Well, and I mean, again, I'm at Johnson Space Center. One of the companies we had back in January is Somatic Labs, and they're more of a wearable, similar to probably the stretchable batteries that I think we're going to hear about. But we had a wearables technology conference coming up shortly after that, so I recommended those guys go down there and attend that, those guys and girls, that team. Which they did, and that's led to some partnership and some work at JSC tying into where we go on our spacesuits and informatics systems. So that's a specific example that I can point to.
Well, I guess first I'll have to admit this is my first iTech, so I don't have a lot of experience with that question. But certainly I've worked a lot with
Actually, that's not true. I sent somebody your way, and you were very helpful to
right.
them.
But I don't have a success story on that one quite yet.
Oh, okay.
It's still in the works. We're only 2 years in, but I certainly have worked with many small businesses, helped them work on their business plans and how to produce products that are valuable both to meet an industry niche, but also something useful to the government that has been successful in basically finding a way to reduce costs and reduce cycle times and deliver some critical hardware for some of our space assets.
So the person that I was referencing is one of our entrepreneurs who started his he started his actual company, the actual technology, when he was a high school student. It was a science project. He got a full scholarship to Case Western and then started a business. He has a plasma solution technology that can regulate the temperature in jet engines, and he's the one that I sent to John so that he can help navigate. He also is the one that has won an SBIR after participating in NASA iTech. So he's in that current phase of his SBIR doing a lot of the work, so he's trying to get connected to the right centers to make sure that his testing's done so that he could hopefully get a phase 2 SBIR. So I put him in touch with John, and I actually ran into him. I saw he was in Boston on a panel that I had, and I said, "How'd that go?" He said, "Oh my gosh, it was very, very helpful." So just so you know. Okay, Ramona.
From the very first iTech, a little less than 2 years ago, there was a company that was a mother-daughter team, where the daughter had a PhD in marine biology and the mother was an attorney. And they created a technology associated with the ability through non-toxic means to get rid of biofilm and deal with fouling and that kind of thing. There's been value of that sort to our center, and I believe to some other centers, maybe even Marshall.
It was Marshall, yes.
Yes, associated with that, because we do have a lot of piping and we bring in natural water sources, and we have wound up with a lot of biological material in there that's been challenging to get rid of, except with toxic means. So this was very beneficial. I don't know how they're doing these days, if you have any of the latest figures, but yeah, that was pretty inspirational, and it was from the very first iTech, so it seems to stick with me the best.
Harry.
There have been several of the iTechs that have been, I mean, the entrants that have had a lot of impact. I don't know I can't think of a collaboration at Ames that has come from it, but I have been at several other meetings and talking to people, and I have actually referred people to some of the iTech companies and gotten contacts from them, and hopefully those will go somewhere. I mean, from the very first iTech, I think the best radiation mitigation proposal I've ever heard came from, was presented at that one. I still think that company is really good, and I'm hoping their technology goes forward. One that was actually not specifically NASA in the end, but I mean, I referred them to the Navy and the Coast Guard, and I think that there's going to be some follow-up there on their technologies. So.
What was the technology?
This is the one for lowering booms and controlling it.
Yes. You had a question?
Al Kowski from, I'm a local small business, and other than SBIR and SDTR, how do we know what technologies you guys are working on? What's the new hotspots? Do we have to call you guys? How do we get there?
So NASA does have a
Technology
program
roadmap?
called TechPort, which is online. It's publicly available, and it gives a brief synopsis of all the technology programs that are currently active. And so that if you have a technology, you just want to know what NASA's doing in that, you can search that, and it'll tell you who's working on it or something related to it, and then it gives you a point of contact.
It's a good resource, I think, for companies that are developing technologies, because sometimes you might need someone that you would like to collaborate with. So it does actually list those companies that are working on it, if they're contractors within the agency. So it's helpful in that way. And it also, it's been a while since I've checked it, but it also has sort of a summary and where the state of that technology is, if it still works the same way, like the TRL level. Maybe.
It gives you the TRL, it gives you a brief summary. They're not always up to date, but at least gives you the abstract of what they were going to do. Doesn't tell you where they are. Sometimes if you do a Google Scholar search on that topic or that person, you can get more detail, but at least gives you the basic, all the programs that are currently active. And some of the ones, I mean, it's program's about 5 years old, so it doesn't go back that far, but it gives you all the technology programs that we're currently investing in.
Okay, well, I'm being signaled that we're out of time. Can you guys give me a round, give them a round of applause for them being up here? Thank you guys for coming, and part of the reason I wanted to do this was so that you would know who to go to, who our representatives are here, but also how we do what we do at NASA, and how they contribute based on their expertise.